And we're going to talk about the services he provides at Center of Symmetry. Now, you're a doctor.
Yes.
And what is your degree in?
And my degree is a doctorate in chiropractic. In addition to the doctorate in chiropractic, I did an additional certification to become a chiropractic wellness practitioner.
Okay.
So with that, it's a little bit of a different look at how we actually deal with the body. Okay. And then that kind of dictated how I progressed in terms of what I would offer. How it differs from traditional chiropractic, or what most people know as chiropractic, is that most people believe in chiropractic as a neck pain, back pain type of therapy, when in actuality, chiropractic was far bigger than neck pain and back pain. And initially, chiropractic is really still around because of like the 1918 flu. And that was a time when people were ill, and the medical community, the people that they thought were going to die off, they just kind of pushed them off to the old chiropractors. And it turns out that chiropractors lost maybe 4 people, where the medical community maybe lost like 400.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how actually chiropractic is still around. It's been around for over 100 years. And so what I do is kind of taking me back to that era of we're addressing the body to make sure the body is capable and functioning and healing at 100%.
So what are some of your techniques that are special?
One of the techniques that I do is more of a nervous system focused technique. It's done with an instrument, but the instrument is tuned at the same frequency as the human body. And so when you're adjusted with the instrument, it has a lot more impact than some of the things that you actually do by hand. A lot of people are used to the cracking and the popping that they may hear when they get adjusted, but actually the instrument is a pretty effective instrument.
What's this instrument called?
It's called the integrator. And I use that with a lot of people who have issues such as maybe even MS or a lot of emotional stuff going on. And I use it a lot with kids too, because it's one of those instruments that it only takes a few times to really start feeling a change.
Well, what is the origins of this instrument?
It actually came from Dr. J Ware. He did quite a few studies trying to reproduce the chiropractic adjustment to help people break addiction patterns. And so the instrument came out of that research, because it was to mimic a toggle recoil adjustment, which is one of the first adjustments that there were, which is a really powerful adjustment. And so he wanted an instrument that could recreate that. So of course, when you're doing your double-blind studies, everything is the same. So it's not, based on the individual. It's based on the instrument.
If you don't mind me asking, how does the instrument work exactly?
Well, the way the instrument works, it's all in the protocol of how we're actually adjusting the person. And so we look for one side of the body to be contracted. And when that side of the body is contracted, it's actually letting us know that there's something going on this side of the body. And so what we do is we go through meningeal attachments in the dura mater of the spine, and we're seeing where those areas are tight and where they're loose, and where they actually need to be adjusted at. And so we challenge different points, and then we go back through and we adjust with the instrument. And then we check back in the legs, and it'll show us if it was corrected or not.
Okay, now you mentioned kids.
Right.
I haven't heard of a whole lot of kids being treated in your industry. Why would they need it, I guess, is my first question.
Well, because there are a lot of different traumas that we experience, and the biggest one that we experience is birth trauma. If you imagine taking yourself from, say we're in Minnesota, and you're inside in a warm, cozy, 75-degree house, and then somebody throws a bucket of water on you and shoves you out in 5 below temperature. It's a shock to your system. Yeah. And it's kind of the same idea with the kid. Is when they're born, they're in this 98.6 degrees, stomach.
I still regret leaving the womb. But go ahead.
Yeah, and then you're thrust out here into this hospital room, which is probably 68 degrees or so. It's a major change. And then who knows how the doctors are pulling. Sometimes they get torqued and sometimes twisted. Sometimes they have forceps and vacuum. All these different things. So that's a lot of birth trauma, especially on the upper neck. And so you want to make sure that a child is actually looked at very early on, so you don't start developing certain issues like the torticollisis, the ear infections, all that type of stuff. You get with the child early on, and that kind of prevents that. Like my daughter's been getting adjusted since she was 1 hour old. And
wow.
So, yeah, I know. I got on her right away. And so,
the doctors looked at you funny?
Well, they didn't know, and I didn't tell them. So it was just one of those things. Well, because she, my daughter had a different type of birth. She actually came early. Okay. And so there were a lot of things that they would come to us and say, well, this is an issue, and we're going to have to check, tomorrow and see what's what, and if this happens, then this. And so I would go and adjust her, and then they'd come back the next day and say, well, I don't know what happened, but she's okay now.
That brings me to another question. Is your science and maybe the medical world, are they at odds sometimes?
They can be. And the reason for that is because we look at things completely differently. Well, and people misunderstand chiropractic for several different reasons. And one is because they know the medical community and they know that model very well. Whereas versus the chiropractic model is completely different. And the medical community is, there's something that you need to come from outside you to heal you. So they'll say your body chemistry is off, so we're going to give you this drug to balance out your chemistry. Whereas in the chiropractic community, we say, okay, you're not healing as you should be, so you have an interference in your system because the body's self-healing, self-regulating. So let's remove this interference and allow your body to heal itself. So we're not pulling anything in from the outside. I mean, the medical community focuses on symptoms, where we focus on function. We're coming from two different angles. I mean, don't get me wrong, we have a great emergency medical system. It's just when it comes to like some of the lifestyle things that we're involved with, like the heart conditions, those are lifestyle. Heart conditions, hypertension, all that's all lifestyle stuff. And so we should address that more with lifestyle and more with allowing the body to heal itself versus with a medication. And that's kind of what the whole purpose of what I do is more of a lifestyle type of a practice, where we're addressing the whole body and we're addressing how people eat, how people move, how people think, how people rest. We're addressing all that to kind of develop them and build them into a healthy individual.
I know in each state it's different about what you can do and what you can't do. Does Tennessee ever interfere with your industry at all?
Tennessee's been pretty well.
Okay.
There's a few states that are really restrictive.
For example?
For example, Michigan. Michigan won't allow you to do anything off of the spine. So spine only, and that's it.
Okay, can you talk about auricular therapy?
Auricular therapy was something also that came out of from Dr. Holder. Something that came along with his study for helping people break addictions. So what it is similar to ear reflexology, or reflexology in itself, but it's in the ear. The only difference is that there are certain points that allow you to kind of get into cranial nerves. And while you're stimulating cranial nerves, you're actually changing up something like the endorphins and enkephalins. Those things that give people the good feelings, you're actually changing those. It works great with people who are trying to stop smoking and people who are trying to lose weight, all those different things, because the receptors that are typically there for nicotine, when we do the auricular therapy, you have that natural stimulation, so those receptors are now taken over by natural endorphins. So you don't need the nicotine anymore.
And it works with electricity, you say?
It's microcurrent stimulation. So it works pretty quick. I mean, most of the people who are like trying to stop smoking, they come through, we do a torque release session and followed by the auricular therapy, and that's it.